In this episode, we talk about a major breakthrough that will solve the problem of weeds in rice and wheat crops. We also talk about Vinesh Phogat creating history at the Paris Olympics. But first, we talk about a promise made by the BJP in their 2024 Lok Sabha elections manifesto. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. The BJP, as a part of their manifesto during the Lok Sabha elections, said that the Ayushman Bharat scheme, which started in 2018, will cover all the senior citizens above the age of 70.
आज जो बुजुर्ग हैं, उनकी बहुत बड़ी चिंता होती है कि बीमारी की स्थिति में इलाज का खर्च कैसे आएगी, और ये मध्यम वर्ग परिवार को ज्यादा होती है। अब भाजपा ने संकल्प लिया है कि 70 वर्ष की आयु से ऊपर के हर बुजुर्ग को आयुष्मान योजना के दायरे में लाया जाएगा। 70 साल के ऊपर के हर बुजुर्ग, चाहे वो गरीब हो, चाहे मध्यम वर्ग के हो, चाहे उच्च मध्यम वर्ग के हो, ये एक नया दायरा होगा जिनको 5 लाख रुपए तक के मुफ्त इलाज की सुविधा मिलेगी.
To learn more about the scheme, the significance of this promise, and how it will impact the expenditure made on the scheme, we have Indian Express's Anonna Dutt joining us. Anonna, for our listeners, can you begin by talking a little bit about the Ayushman Bharat scheme?
So, Ayushman Bharat is a health insurance scheme by the government, which is essentially meant for the 40% of the poorest people in the country. Of course, there are others who have now been added to the scheme, such as ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers, transgender people. But mainly it is to give sort of health coverage to the really poor people who otherwise would not be able to afford a lot of tertiary care hospitalizations.
And what is the qualification criteria for receiving the benefits of this scheme?
So right now, as I said, the poorest 40%, so only the 70-year-olds who are in this section have Ayushman Bharat coverage. The rest, there has been an announcement by the BJP in their manifesto and even by the President of India that the government will try to bring in all 70-year-olds under the coverage, but that hasn't happened yet. When it comes to the Ayushman Bharat scheme itself, the main data point is the SECC database, which is the socio-economic and caste census, which was done last in 2011. So this has been the basis for inclusion into the scheme. But now the state governments have also been given the freedom of adding people based on any other, state database that they might have, depending on who they consider to be the most marginalized and poor.
And Anonna, what kind of an expenditure is made on the scheme according to the data from the last 6 years?
So right now we have just looked at the data from the last 6 years. So the scheme started in September 2018. And since then, the data till January this year suggests that over 79,000 crores have been spent on people's hospitalization and treatments.
And Anonna, why is this promise so significant? Why is it important for the scheme to cover the senior citizens above the age of 70?
So this whole promise or announcement by the government is very significant because our population is aging and we are also living longer. So there is a significant proportion of people living with chronic diseases. Secondly, it is extremely difficult for the elderly to get covered under insurance policies. The premiums are extremely high and the payouts are not very significant. They do not, get cover for certain diseases, etc. Or, these policies have a cap for how much you can spend on a certain disease or in one admission. So all of these things have, kept the elderly out of the insurance net. And while there are certain schemes like, say, CGHS or ECHS, which do cover people over the age of 70, and even Ayushman Bharat covers those above the age of 70 who are among the poorest. But even for the general, middle class people, this is needed because right now the health protection is not very good for the elderly.
And now that the government wants to include each and every person above the age of 70 years within the ambit of this scheme, so what kind of an increase is expected in the expenditure regarding the same?
So what experts say is that the exchequer would end up spending a significant amount, mainly due to two reasons. One is that once we bring in 70-year-olds above, right now we are considering only the poorest people. But when people of means get included in the scheme, they are much more likely to utilize it and utilize it in, say, private sector hospitals that are enrolled under the scheme. So all of this is likely to bring up the cost that the government might have to pay out. Secondly, when you have more number of older people in a scheme, the premium that the government would have to pay is likely to increase as well, because older people are more prone to having complications of their chronic diseases or get infections or have falls, which could result in, bone breaks and stuff, which would again need hospitalization. So hospitalization in general is likely to be higher among the older people. And secondly, people of means are likely to utilize their policy more. This is why experts say that, expanding the scheme would likely increase cost to the exchequer.
And Anonna, what were some of the major trends that emerged as far as the data that was submitted in the parliament regarding the scheme was concerned?
So first of all, I will speak a little bit about the data. Indian Express went through the data submitted in the parliament on, the amount that the number of hospitalizations that have been approved and the amount that has been spent on them for 70-year-olds, and then compared it to what we know has been the total number of admissions and total cost of the scheme with the general population. Of course, the 40% that has been included in the scheme as of now. And what we saw is that, first of all, one big trend that emerged was that 12% of all hospitalizations were among the 70-year-olds. Now, why is this significant? It's because the estimates suggest that in the general given population, those above the age of 70 constitute about 10% of the population. So that means the elderly people getting admitted to hospitals more than the general population. That is one finding. The second finding is that 14% of the cost that has been borne by the government so far in total was for the treatment of 70-year-olds and above, which means not only are more elderly people getting hospitalized, they are also spending more on these hospitalizations. So these were the two main findings.
Right. And according to the state-wise report, which are the states with the maximum and the minimum proportions of hospital admissions?
So when we look at the absolute numbers, then states like Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, they figure on top. They have the highest number of admissions in 70-year-olds. But barring Kerala, the proportion of total admissions is not amongst the highest in these states, which means the entire population is sort of utilizing the scheme, and there is a high utilization of these schemes in these southern states. But when we are looking at the proportion of admissions, then we see that states like, Maharashtra, Haryana, Bihar, these have seen higher utilization among the elderly as compared to general population. So take, for example, Maharashtra, 20% of their, hospitalizations have been in 70 years and above. Haryana, it's 18.13%. So in terms of proportion, these are the states which have seen, higher utilization among the elderly.
So, Anonna, what is the way forward?
So BJP actually made a promise of, providing cover to every 70-year-old and above in the country, irrespective of their income status or their economic situation, in their manifesto ahead of the Lok Sabha polls. And it was given further strength by the mention in the President's address this year in the parliament. So the president also said that this would happen. However, as of now, no budget allocation has been made or work, it hasn't started on this. This year, actually, the full budget, which just happened, saw the increase of allocation for Ayushman Bharat by just 100 crores. So the allocation right now is about 7,300 crores.
And next we talk about a major breakthrough in wheat and rice farming. Cultivating rice without flooding the field, not burning the leftover stubble after harvesting, and growing wheat without any ploughing or land preparation has been a dream for agricultural scientists, mostly because these activities are ecologically not very sustainable. But they have become a regular practice because they are necessary for removing weeds from the crops. However, recently a solution has been found for this problem. To learn about this breakthrough and how it has the potential to put all these activities like flooding a paddy field and repeated ploughing of a wheat field to an end, we have Indian Express's Harish Damodaran joining us. Harish, can you begin by telling us how major a problem weeds pose when it comes to rice and wheat growth?
See, weeds are the number one enemy of plants. Basically, they compete with the plants for nutrients, for fertilizer, for sunlight, for water. So all farmers like their fields to be free of weed so that only the plants can grow. And rice particularly, it faces this problem, a lot of this problem, in its early stages of growth. So in the early stages, when the rice plant grows, there are a lot of weeds which will emerge. So therefore, farmers need a solution. The traditional solution they had was basically flood the fields, because rice has what they call as parenchyma tissues, which can breathe underwater. Weeds cannot breathe. So I basically drown the weed seeds, So I ensure that those weed seeds, they don't germinate. Or the seedlings that have emerged, it'll get killed by basically flooding the water. So that is the reason why when we see rice fields, it requires a lot of water. And the role of water is precisely to kill the weeds. Same thing, why do we plough the wheat fields so much? Ploughing again is meant basically to kill the weeds. So this is precisely the thing. So when we come to rice, typically, farmers water their fields give irrigation about something like 30 irrigations during the lifetime, And in the initial, say about 2 to 3 weeks, I have to ensure that about 4 to 5 centimeter depth constant has to be maintained, So the field has to be flooded. So if you look at, say, 30 irrigations, and each irrigation consuming something like 2 lakh liters, that is about 60 lakh liters in 1 acre. And 1 acre will produce about, say, something like 2,000 kgs of rice. So which means to produce 1 liter of rice, you need something like 3,000 liters of water. That is the kind of water use which rice requires. And why are we using so much of water in the case of rice? Only to manage weeds.
Along with flooding the fields, what extra steps are the farmers currently indulging in order to keep the weeds at bay?
Right now, the process is the farmers first prepare a nursery. Okay, I first sow a paddy nursery. Say, if it is 1 acre, say maybe 1/10 of an acre, I'll take a nursery. And after about 25-30 days, I uproot that plant and then I transplant it in the main field. And where I then, flood the field with water. That is the normal thing. So suppose you have a situation, instead of preparing nurseries, puddling the field and then transplanting and flooding, if I can directly sow rice, just like in the case of wheat or many other, that has been a dream of the scientists, what they call as direct seeding of rice. Similarly, in the case of wheat, they say, no-till, zero-till wheat. And that is one way of making this entire rice-wheat farming environmentally more sustainable.
So have any solutions been found for this problem yet?
So what the technology talks about is you replace water and repeated ploughings. Water and ploughings basically do the job of weed removal. So you replace those with actual herbicides, that is chemical herbicides, which can do the job of killing the weeds. But that's easier said than done. Because if I spray a herbicide, in this case, the herbicide which they found is called imazethapyr. So if I spray this weedicide on an ordinary wheat or an ordinary paddy plant, the herbicide will not distinguish between the plant and the weeds. It'll kill the plants along with the weeds. It's a very effective herbicide, but it'll kill the plants also. It doesn't know whether this is a rice plant or this is a weed.
So Harish, tell us a bit about this recent breakthrough by way of which the crops won't be impacted by these chemicals and herbicides.
So what scientists have tried to do is to breed varieties of rice and wheat that can tolerate the application of this imazethapyr herbicide so that it'll kill only the weeds and it won't kill the rice and the wheat plant. And that's what this latest technology breakthrough is. And I think the technology may be about 5-6 years old, but in India, we are probably trying it for the first time. So this particular herbicide, it is a broad spectrum herbicide. It is effective against a very wide range of weeds, So to that extent, it can replace water and it can also replace, repeated ploughings.
And Harish, how are these new herbicide-tolerant seeds reaching the farmers?
Here there are two companies. One company is called RiceTech. RiceTech is based in the US and they have an Indian subsidiary which is called Savannah and they work only on rice. So they have developed a cropping solution which is based on the use of imazethapyr herbicide. Then you have another company which is Mahiko, which used to be called the Maharashtra Hybrid Seeds Company. They were the ones who brought in BT cotton, your genetically modified cotton. They tied up with Monsanto. So in this case, Mahiko and RiceTech have joined together. They said, hey, I have expertise in wheat, you have expertise in rice. Let's come together and let's work together. Because the farmer who is growing wheat is also growing paddy. So let's come together. And both of us have developed technology which enables the application of this imazethapyr herbicide. And that's what the main thing is. Now they are working towards the farmers. They have tested it in the fields. And I think this year itself, something like 15,000 acres have already been covered under imazethapyr resistant rice.
And can you talk a bit about the benefits of these new herbicide-tolerant crops?
One of the attractions is, I can harvest paddy and then immediately I can plant wheat. So for all of us living in Delhi, etc., this should be of interest to us. Because right now what is happening, the farmer is just burning the stubble, right? After harvesting the paddy, you have the paddy stubble which is remaining. And then he burns the entire stubble, right? Along with the straw, everything, right? And he does why? Because he needs to sow wheat. And he needs a clean field for sowing wheat. So there's no time. So here, these companies are saying, hey, don't worry. You harvest your paddy, but there's no need to burn the stubble. You can cut the stubble using a super seeder and you can mix it with the soil, incorporate in the soil. And then you just spray imazethapyr herbicide and that'll kill all the weeds, So there'll be no paddy stubble burning. We save water, right? Because no need to puddle the fields, flood the fields and all these things, right? And transplanting, there's a lot of labor required. In Punjab and all, they get laborers from Bihar, UP, etc. They come and I think an average farmer spends, 4,000, 5,000 rupees per acre, on transplanting. And you don't get labor. So here you save labor cost. You save a lot of fuel, right? Because you don't need to plow your fields repeatedly. You are saving water. So I think that this is quite a game-changing technology.
And there is always this question that whether a new type of seed or crop that has come up is genetically modified or not. So Harish, for our listeners, can you explain what is genetic modification?
I think as consumers, we would be concerned, because I think generally there is a suspicion against genetically modified crops, right? Like, for example, your genetically modified mustard wasn't cleared commercially, right? And you had BT brinjal, which was not approved. For some reason, right or wrong, we have a problem with genetically modified foods. And when we say genetic modification, it means, say a rice plant which will contain a gene which is from, say, a bacteria. So basically, when we say genetically modified, it means transgenic. That is, you are crossing species and even genus, right? I'm transferring a gene from a bacteria to rice or to cotton or to mustard, right? And so there is a problem there, right? Which the consumer acceptance is limited.
So are these new herbicide-tolerant crops of wheat and rice genetically modified?
But here, in the case of this imazethapyr tolerant wheat and rice, there is no foreign gene, there is no alien gene. Basically, what you're doing is you are kind of manipulating a gene which already exists. Okay, and that gene is called acetolactate synthase gene. They call it the ALS gene. So the ALS gene is already present in the rice plant. The ALS gene is already present in the wheat plant. And as I said, when you spray normal imazethapyr on rice plants, basically what happens is it sort of binds itself. This chemical will kind of bind itself onto this gene. And this gene is responsible for synthesizing many essential amino acids, which are required for plant growth. The herbicide will then bind itself onto the gene and then it will destroy the plant also. But here what they have done, the genetic modification which they have done is, they have done what is called a mutation. Basically, they have changed the DNA through a mutation. So what happens is, so now this herbicide no longer binds itself on the sites where this gene is there. So therefore, the gene continues its activity. So it's a mutated gene. So it is not a foreign gene. It is a gene which already exists. And what they have done is simple mutation. There is no gene modification or anything of this kind,
And Harish, as you mentioned, the use of these herbicides to get rid of the weeds has already started. But is it safe for the humans since we will be consuming these crops?
This ALS gene is present only in plants and microorganisms. It's not present in humans. It's not present in any mammal. So this particular herbicide, it cannot bind itself onto us. So even this herbicide is perfectly safe as far as humans and mammals are concerned, unlike other herbicides. So I think we should give a chance to this particular technology.
And in the end, we talk about Vinesh Phogat at the Paris Olympics. Yesterday, Vinesh Phogat created history and became the first Indian female wrestler ever to reach the final at the Olympic Games. She now stands on the cusp of a gold medal. She defeated Yusnelis Guzman 5-0 in the semi-final and fought for the gold. Vinesh Phogat's uncle Mahavir Phogat told PTI that he trusts her hard work and she will win a gold medal.
देखिए आपकी बात तो रोज जब ओलंपिक क्वालिफाई किया था उस दिन से मेरे पूरा विश्वास था आपके बाद गोल्ड मेडल लेके आएगी और जो पहली फाइट हुई थी जो जापान गए तो वो भी बहुत बढ़िया लड़की थी आज तक किसी लड़की से वो हारी नहीं ने और वे ने जो उसको हरा करके उसी टाइम जो गोल्ड मेडल का संदेश सारे देश को दे दिया था और मेरी पूरी आस उम्मीद है अब की बार बेटे जो मेरा सपना था जो कई साल से वो पक्का जो पूरा करके जब लौटेगी हिंदुस्तान.
Earlier in the day, she produced a stunning upset that shook the wrestling community when she handed reigning champion Yui Sasaki a tactical defeat in the first round. Vinesh Phogat then backed that up with a hard-fought quarter-final win to enter the semi-finals of the 50 kg category. During her bout with Yui Sasaki, Phogat had begun at a sedate note against her high-profile opponent, who has been considered to be virtually unbeatable in the circuit. Consequently, Vinesh lost a couple of passivity points and trailed 0-2 for majority of her clash before stunning Sasaki. While time was running out, Vinesh clinched the late takedown to deny Sasaki a gold medal with only 20 seconds to spare in a thrilling clash. The 25-year-old Sasaki had won gold in the category at the Tokyo Games without dropping a single point across 4 bouts. As per records, Sasaki has only lost 34 bouts in her entire wrestling career, while winning over 700 of them. Sasaki had also won the World Championship gold in 2017 in the 48 kg category, followed by 2019, 2022 and even 2023. Incidentally, Vinesh is the first international wrestler to trounce Sasaki on the mat. In the quarterfinals, Phogat defeated Ukraine's Oksana Livak 7-5. 27-year-old Livak had clinched the 50 kg bronze medal in the 2018 World Championships before winning the gold at the 2019 European Championship. And in her bout with Livak, Vinesh secured 4 points in the final 20 seconds to clinch a massive victory. Vinesh has endured underwhelming campaigns in her Olympic career in Rio 2016 and in Tokyo 2020, finishing 10th and 9th respectively. After competing in the 53 kg category in the previous games, Vinesh had decided to trim down to the 50 kg category for the games this year. And finally, she became the first Indian female wrestler to enter the final of the Olympics. Abhinav Bindra, India's first individual Olympic gold medalist, shared a post on social media site X rooting for her where he said, quote, "A torn ligament, a lower weight category, an unbeaten world champion. Nothing stands in her way. Can't wait to cheer Vinesh Phogat as she goes for gold. Your resilience and strength inspire us all. What an inspiring day. Here's hoping for one more." Unquote. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.